amongst sort of a few different organisations she's worked with, but I noticed she worked with uphill athletes and also with Girls on Hills, who I sometimes work for, so I was looking to talk about that. And I suppose the main thing she wanted me to say is she works with people at all ends of the athletic and physical spectrum, not just elite athletes. And that's why she's come to you today. So, welcome, Rebecca.
Okay, thanks very much to Mountain Training for having me and for inviting me here. One of the main reasons I came is because I really recognize the kind of lack of practical nutrition information out there for women that go into the mountains in particular. So today I hope that you can all take away at least one thing that you can go and start using that will have a really big benefit to you in your day-to-day and when you go into work, whether it's in the mountains, on the hill, or indoors. So before, about a month ago, I put out a survey. Did anybody complete the survey? Did anybody see it on the? Thank you very much. Thank you. Because there is research out there looking at women and the influence of our hormones throughout the menstrual cycle and the female lifespan, and there is much more demand for that information, which is fantastic. But what we're also not doing is asking you what you want to know and what information you need to then make applicable. So hopefully I will tie the two together in this session. So just in terms of nutrition is really individual and it's a massive topic. I've rammed all of the slides full of information. So if anybody wants to take a picture of the slides, please feel free to take a picture. And then also I think the slides will be made available for you to use and read through after the conference. Nutrition is really individual, and you know, although we're all women, we're all individuals, and we all have different experiences of the menstrual cycle and the female lifespan differently, and how we respond to that in terms of how we deal with it, in terms of whether we feel low in energy, whether we feel emotional, and how that relates to if that has an impact on our food intake. And also I will be talking to you about how good nutrition practices or eating certain foods can also help us to feel better and help with our energy levels and help support our hormones as we age. These are some of the examples just to show the individual differences of some females that I've worked with, both recreational and professional or competitive. So one female competition climber, she experienced in and around when she was about to have her period an increased recovery time. So after her training session, she just felt like she needed longer to recover. And then she had some existing niggles and injuries, and she felt that again in and around her period, she felt an increased pain. She just really felt those injuries a bit more prevalent, a bit more noticeable. So I worked with her to focus on fueling her training sessions so we could optimize her recovery, making sure she was eating enough day to day to support her training, but also really looking after her nutrition and her health, especially around her injuries and especially focused around the time she had her period. Alternatively, I worked with a competition ultra runner, and she had sort of mild PMS symptoms. We suggested a magnesium supplement. She took a magnesium supplement, no PMS symptoms, nothing else was a problem. So some people breeze through their menstrual cycle, especially when we have a healthy functioning menstruation, but some people struggle and find it challenging. So we need to respond to those different symptoms and how the individual deals with that. Similar with the recreational mountain runner, chronic low iron, she was going through perimenopausal changes in menstrual cycle. So she tracked religiously. She used an app, she used a thermometer, she measured the amount of blood she was losing with a cup, so we could really understand what was going on and why her iron levels were so low. So this is just to give you an example of the individual differences between us all, even though we're all female and we're all women. And this is assuming females in terms of the physiological sense. So I asked you all in the survey, what are your challenges around your menstruation and the female lifespan, so perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, and the challenges that you have when you go into the mountains. And these is, again, I put loads on. I had 88 responses, and I was just going through trying to find some good responses. So if you want to take a picture of this, please take it. But someone said none, which is great, and that's okay. If we don't have any We don't feel like we have any challenges around our menstruation, lifespan in terms of perimenopause, menopause, that's a bit different, but menstruation, then we don't need to necessarily address it. It's all about good nutrition practices and eating healthily and eating enough. Low energy was one that kept coming up. Fatigue, low iron, something common that I work with. Some people just challenges managing the practical aspect, and I think this is a conversation that definitely needs to be had. That's not necessarily my remit to do, but certainly people experiencing, the hygiene aspect of being on a period, and then how to deal with that when we go into environments where we can't just nip to the toilet and have clean toilets and facilities to wash our hands. So that came up quite often. Calorie requirements vary with our cycle. We do see with a healthy, normal menstruation that our calorie requirements do slightly change through that. And then you've got the addition of maybe your really active big days working out in the mountains, and then how do you cope with those challenges. And again, practical issues, bleeding heavily, making long days differently. Fatigue was something that was really common. Can everybody relate to what's, so, okay. I would say to begin with is that we all have to get to know ourselves. I've been having a couple of conversations here today and previously. When I was in my 20s, 30s, these conversations weren't being had. We weren't really necessarily focusing on women's nutrition. When I read research papers when I was studying, women were coupled together with children and the elderly, and a small paragraph. So it wasn't necessary, the information wasn't there. It was nutrition for your sporting performance, and then women came under special considerations, women, children, and the elderly, in a small paragraph. So it's amazing to see the evidence is coming and there's more research being done. But regardless of that, we are still all individuals, as I repeatedly say. And the number one thing that is coming through within the research is to monitor your symptoms. Find out how you feel, what you're experiencing as you move through your monthly cycle and as you move through the lifespan of perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. And it's a personalized approach. So whatever symptoms you're experiencing, trying to become more aware of that. And then also becoming aware of how you respond to that. So as we move through our menstruation phase, if we're feeling more emotional, do respond to that by maybe eating or comfort eating, for want of a better phrase. Do we find that we have a low mood in and around that time? Or as we move through the perimenopause, are we finding that, my digestion's changing, or are we experiencing more bloating? And then nutrition can either help or hinder in terms of our response to that. So it's really get an understanding of you and how you are experiencing the change in your hormones through a monthly phase, but also through the lifespan. Does anybody do that? Some of you, yeah. And again, the other thing I've heard is this is a tool. Some people just breeze through the menstrual cycle and don't feel any changes, any symptoms. I know I did when I went through my 20s and 30s. Certainly, I wasn't affected. Very fortunate to not have PMS, but now I'm 43. Going through perimenopause, I'm starting to have to be a bit more careful, do a lot more self-care, and certainly feel more affected. And again, this is a conversation I feel like we all need to be having, not just when we're in our 20s and 30s, but certainly moving up the age brackets. I suggest keeping a food diary just to understand what your current nutrition intake is like. Does anybody track their food intake? No. And you don't have to. I get people who come to me and go, I am so sick of tracking my food intake every day. And I'm like, just stop. We don't need to do these behaviors if they're not helping us. If you're tracking your food intake, but you don't know what to look at, what's the point of tracking? If you're tracking your food intake and it's being harmful, it's causing you to restrict, it's causing you to keep your calories down, it's causing you to feel stressed, then don't do it. But again, something to be more aware of if you don't really pay attention to what you eat day to day, or if you want to make some changes to start to improve your nutrition, and I'll go through some easy to put into practice changes today. So keeping a food diary, it has to be just for one day or for a couple of days if you wish, just to see what you're doing on a day-to-day basis and what you're eating. But only do that if it's something that isn't necessarily going to be harmful in terms of having a negative influence on your mental health and how you feel, and then your eating behaviors. But keep it simple. And there's lots of tracking apps that you can use, but you can simply use a piece of paper, you can use a tracking app, or you can just be mindful as you move through the month as to how you're feeling and then how that might influence what you're eating. So this is a slide here for everyone, just a bit of action points. So if you're experiencing PMS, increased hunger and cravings, I'll go through all of these in more detail, but just some tips for you to kind of start to think about and put into action. So if you've got increased hunger and cravings, then maybe trying to make sure that you've got enough protein in each meal and protein in snacks, and I'll give you some workable examples on that. Some of the basic fundamentals will actually go a long way in supporting your symptoms throughout the month and also the lifespan, so making sure that you've got good hydration. Does everybody feel like they're hydrated on a day-to-day basis? No. Start there, and I've got information for you on this. We get lost in the nuance of the detail, and we think about research coming out on the influence of the hormones on our energy and nutrition and our metabolism, and it is there, but actually there's fundamental basics that we all can be doing and should be doing on a day-to-day basis that will go a long way and a lot further to supporting you, your health and your performance in the mountains by following these basic principles. And I guarantee that they will have an influence within a couple of days or a couple of weeks of putting these into practice. And I would say 99.9% of people I work with, whether they are recreational and just go hiking in the hills, or whether elite athletes, don't do the fundamentals either well or consistently or regularly enough. And I appreciate we will go into the mountains and it's not always achievable, and I'll give you some strategies to deal with that as well. So this was just an information slide for you. I'm going to go through it in a bit detail in the following slides. So in the survey that I sent out, I also asked you, what nutrition challenges do you as women going into mountains have just on a day-to-day basis? So when you're at home on a day-to-day basis. Some of you said none. No, which is fantastic, which is great. Some of you said you don't plan, so it's difficult then to control or eat healthily. Some people say that unsure what foods to benefit women going through the menopause and how to balance those with family meals. Often we feel like we have to follow some dietary approach, some dietary method or some fad that then isn't sustainable because it doesn't match what we eat with our families. Maybe we feel like we have to cook 2 different meals. So again, the approach is trying to be inclusive, and actually eating isn't about removing foods, it's about helping you understand what foods you need to add in and what easy to implement changes you can make that will help you and support you, but also the rest of your family, and we should all be doing anyway. Someone said I'm fairly balanced, which is fantastic. And I quite like this one, I'm a sod for easy rather than healthy. So it's trying to find the practical solutions and not just be guided by what we hear or what people tell us to do or what we are told to do by some influencer. So some of you might have seen this at lunchtime. Cards on the table. So these are the basic, fundamental principles that we should be doing on a day-to-day basis, but I can guarantee you they will have the biggest influence and the biggest benefit to you. Carbohydrate is demonized. Often people believe, particularly athletes, that carbohydrates are bad, they make you put weight on. Whereas actually if you're active female going into the mountains or you're active on a day-to-day basis, you do need to eat carbohydrate to fuel your exercise. And if you're trying to cut it down, you're trying to minimize it, then it's going to lend you feeling hungry. You're then going to be looking around the kitchen, eating your way around the kitchen before you have your dinner, when actually we need to be consuming carbohydrate in our meals on a day-to-day basis, and we need to eat carbohydrate for our female health. It helps support our metabolism, our hormone regulation, and our bone formation. So we need to make sure it's there. Eating enough protein in each meal, palm size in each meal, and making sure it's in breakfast, lunch, evening meal, and pre-bed. Again, I know for when you go into the mountain that might not be practically possible, but it's about being consistent on a day-to-day basis. Protein is number one. It's missed primarily in breakfast, so things like eggs are great, yogurts are great, but often people will just have toast and jam or cereal or miss breakfast altogether. Adding protein in each meal and having it in the snacks And in recovery after your big days out will go a long way in helping you manage your energy levels, helping you manage your fatigue, helping managing your recovery on a day-to-day basis, especially if you find yourself out on back-to-back days. So this is the one thing to help to add in. And on the next slide, I've given you a list of all the foods that these are. So what are carbohydrate, protein foods? Healthful fats is often another one that's missed. It's required for production of our sex hormones, regular menstrual cycle, bone health, immunity, and making sure that that's included in every meal. This might seem basic, but these are the fundamentals that will make a big difference to you and to your health and to your health as females. So healthy fat-rich foods in terms of oats, seeds, olive oil, avocados, nuts, nut butters, all of those types of things, and making sure it's in each of your meal. And then aiming for 5 portions of fruit and veg a day. Does everybody feel like they get their 5 portions of fruit and veg a day? Yeah. Fruit and veg are really important for recovery after exercise. It helps manage muscle fatigue, helps with muscle recovery. It helps with managing inflammation, especially with females and as we age. It's about getting 5 portions of fruit and veg a day, 1 serving being of berries daily and 2 servings of vegetables with each meal, and you'll easily get your 5. So it's making sure that's included, and it will help support your day-to-day energy levels and also help support your health. And I'll also go on to how it can have an influence on PMS and as we age through peri-menopause and menopause. Just another those of you that feel that aren't hydrated on a day-to-day basis, if you simply timed your body weight in kilos by 35 mil, it will give you an idea of how much to drink on a day-to-day basis. Out on the hill, out in the mountain all day when access to fluid is going to be limited. So as I was saying, there is research coming through that's looking at energy and nutrient metabolism through our menstruation, or assuming a healthy menstruating female, so you have a period on a regular basis. But that's about zooming in too close in terms of, some of you might have read that through our follicular phase, we have an increase in use of carbohydrate, and then through the luteal phase, there's an increase in use in the fats within our body. So you might hear some people suggesting that we do aerobic training, or we carry out more activity aerobically through our follicular phase, and then we do strength training through our follicular phase, and we carry out more aerobic training through our luteal phase, whereas actually it's about the most important thing that we can do to look after our health as females is making sure we need enough energy and that we eat enough on a day-to-day basis. It's about looking at what we can add into our diet and not always thinking about what we cut out or what we restrict. Good evidence to show that when we're experiencing PMS, increasing your intake of fruit and veg can really help manage those symptoms, manage the pain, manage the cramps, and can really help alleviate that. A magnesium supplement, again, can help manage the PMS symptoms we experience, cramp particularly. Good hydration, which many of you said that you don't achieve on a day-to-day basis, again can help manage our energy levels, our fatigue, our bowel movements in and around our period. And then looking at what I said earlier is looking at symptom management and keeping a track of your symptoms and food intake through the month if that's something that you feel that you want to do. And then fuel and recover with carbohydrates. So if you are spending a lot of time outdoors being active, then it's fueling those sessions. If you're someone that trains on a regular basis, then it's making sure you fuel those training sessions relevantly with carbohydrate, and then you recover well and eat well. How do you know if you're eating enough? With a lot of people that I work with, many people are coming to me asking about weight loss, restrictive eating practices. They're cutting out food, minimizing maybe carbohydrate, cutting out dairy, don't eat gluten. And I'm not suggesting that they are not practices you shouldn't be followed. Generally, some people do have intolerances to these foods, but it's about thinking about what foods you need to add in. Food should be a sociable experience. It should be enjoyed. We're really good at telling people what not to eat instead of telling people what we do need to eat. So how do you know if you're eating enough? So if you're someone that is always thinking about cutting food out, restricting food, always feeling like you need to lose weight, always trying to keep your weight down, or always trying to be in an energy deficit because you feel like you should be losing weight or you're not a healthy weight, then I would try to turn that on its head and think about all of the foods that you can add in. Do you feel your training sessions? Do you go out and plan your food for your hill day? Or if you spend the day at the crag, are you thinking about your nutrition as much as you're thinking about the kit that you're going to take with you? For those big mountain days, I'll give you some key strategies, but actually it's thinking about how you can fuel those days to maximize your energy levels, to help you manage and work well on those back-to-back days, and it's making sure that you include some carbohydrate foods. Again, the survey that I sent out, many people were saying I need to cut out sugar, I eat too much sugar. Actually, sugar is the one thing that you can use on these big mountain days because it's your fast energy source. It's a fuel source that you need to use during the time that you are active, and then when it comes to your day-to-day nutrition, that's when you try to be consistent with good eating practices. So do you intentionally or unintentionally restrict your eating? Trying to think differently about the way you eat and change your mindset and your approach. Do you have missed lighter changes in your periods? Again, people I've worked with, I've had one woman who came to me, she was genuinely overweight and wanted to lose weight to be healthier. But because she'd been in an energy deficit for such an extended period of time, it was starting to influence and have a negative impact on her menstrual cycle. She was having missed periods and lighter periods. So I was encouraging her to add more and to eat more and come out of the energy deficit because it was being harmful to her health. So being mindful of what's happening with your menstrual cycle on a month-to-month basis and then looking at your eating practices around that. Are you experiencing, another sign of kind of underfueling or not eating enough is, are you experiencing regular niggles? Do you have a pain or an injury that keeps happening on a regular basis that you guys can't seem to correct? And then if you're coupling that with trying to keep your food intake down, trying to be in an energy deficit all the time because you think you need to lose weight, then try to think again about what food you can add in to support your health and your exercise performance. Do you have a poor recovery, low energy, muscle fatigue, all of the comments that came up earlier? What can you do to add more? So moving on to peri-menopause. Women who experience, as we get older, there is a change in our hormones and a reduction in estrogen and an increased rise in inflammation and a change in hormones that influence our body composition and where we store body fat. And there is, the more women I work with in terms of the peri-menopause, they do come to me and report that actually they're gaining weight and undesirable weight that they don't want to gain. And this is coming from a health perspective. They have undesirable changes in body composition. They're just not being, they feel like they're not as healthy, or they don't feel as if the weight is staying the same as it was when they're in their 20s and 30s. They're having changes in digestion, and we've seen in the research that as we age, our digestion does slow. So these are all of the changes that can start to happen as our hormones change as we go through the ages and into the peri-menopause. And some of the things that you can do to combat that is not cutting out food, not causing an energy deficit necessarily, and not restricting your intake, but watching the extras that are creeping in. We do have to be more conscious as we age with what we eat. So it's just watching those little extras that are coming in and being mindful of that, including protein with all of your meals and snacks. Again, that's the one key thing that I'd probably all encourage you is hydration on a day-to-day basis, making sure you've got protein in all your meals and snacks, and eating plenty of fruit and vegetables. And for women, particularly if you're experiencing bloating and going through the menopause, then a probiotic can certainly help. And then considering supplements, that's something I would suggest that you speak to someone like a dietitian or nutritionist if that's something you want to do. And then the other strong evidence that's coming through as women, and particularly as women we age, is to take part in strength training. This doesn't mean you have to go to the gym or do HIIT classes, but it's generally body weight classes, body weight sessions twice a week, just to really support our metabolism and our bone health as we age. Menopause, post-menopause, again, list of all of the symptoms and the experiences and the changes that happen to our body. We have an increase in muscle mass loss with the aging process, increase in inflammation. So again, I'm saying the same thing. It's good, consistently good eating practices. A probiotic can help with digestion. And with women as we age, and certainly going into the menopause, we start to then really need to focus on making sure we give ourselves enough time to recover from exercise and making sure there's protein going in the recovery phase after our activity. Increasing fruit and vegetables, I'm saying the same thing. Introducing some soya products for the benefits of the estrogen as our estrogen levels drop as we age. And again, focused strength training. So in the survey, I asked again, what are your nutritional challenges for big mountain days? And here's what you said. None. So some of you have got it dialed and are doing okay, which is fantastic. Drinking enough water, especially in the winter when you have to use bottles instead of a bladder. So hydration, access to fluids, toileting facilities. Some people were worried about drinking because then the need to go to the toilet. Trying to avoid packing in too much sugar and being able to keep blood sugar relatively stable. Remembering to actually eat and drink, so going back to planning. Anybody relate to any of these here? Yeah. Often fail to drink enough, but pretty clued up on nutrition, which is fantastic. So I say big mountain days, but this covers all days. If you're out for the whole day, if you're out at a crag, the idea is to start the day hydrated. If you start the day hydrated, often where we go into the mountains, into the hills, there's very limited access to fluid. So you need to start the day ahead. Eat a snack on the way in the car or gearing up. Often they're early starts. Some of us might miss breakfast, or we've had breakfast early, or we've had a really small breakfast. So I would encourage you to eat a carbohydrate-based snack in the car on the way to the start of your day, or actually as you're gearing up. So whether it's a banana, whether it's rice cakes, whether it's a cereal bar, whether it's some dried fruit, getting ready and topping up your energy levels before your big day. Because you're out, for those of you that are out for extended period of time through the day, choose a mix of real foods. And using the sugary snacks like the gums or the gels, if you use that, the jelly sweets, for those times that you really need the boost of energy. Maybe it's from the walk back down or the part of the day where you really need a bit of a motivational boost. And using the sugary snacks when you know that you're going to benefit from them most. And obviously a mix of real foods. On the next slide, I've got a whole list of different food options for you. And then for those of you that, in terms of low energy, recovery, muscle fatigue, everyone ideally including a source of protein with the snacks that you take out with you for the day, and I've given you another list of those. This isn't going to happen on its own. Does anybody plan your nutrition for the days out? No. Few of you, great. You need to make a plan. If you make this initial plan, it will take you some time, but once you put a conscious effort into it, it will become easier over time to then just, you know what you need to grab, you know what you need to take out for that day on the hill. So it's going to make a conscious effort to plan, and then it becomes easier to put into practice. The one thing that people were concerned about was toileting, not wanting to feel like you need to go to the toilet through the day. If you take a sports drink out with you on the hill, then you will retain more of that fluid than just drinking water alone. I've given you a recipe for a homemade sports drink, but taking a sports drink, it will give you the energy as well, so it's another supplemental intake of energy, but also help you absorb the fluid that you're drinking, so reducing the occurrence of you wanting to pee, and hopefully aiding hydration better, especially if your access to fluids is limited. Eating a recovery snack at the end of every single day. So having something back at the car to eat before you for the long drive home. Does anybody do that? Yes, amazing. You can try, whether it's a recovery shake powder that you mix with water in the car, whether it's a sandwich, whether it's a protein energy bar that you have, something that's easy to grab and that you can eat on your way home. And then rehydrating. And if you, as a lot of people asked about electrolytes after a big day will also help to rehydrate you, especially if you're doing big back-to-back days, or if you know you're going to be out for an extended period of time the following day. Eating a protein-containing snack before bed, like a yogurt, like a recovery shake. Protein shakes, does anybody use protein shakes? Some of you. They're ingredients of food. So things like whey protein is a derivative of milk. You get some really great plant-based protein powders. They're convenient and they're easy to use. It's always food first, but if it's a hot sunny day and you're back at the car, you definitely don't want to turn up to a warm sandwich or something that's inedible because it's been sat in the car. So protein powders can be helpful to have, and then you can simply add water to them and drink them on the way home. And they're just convenience, especially if you're away traveling, especially if you're staying in huts, something to take with you just to really help with the day-to-day recovery and help promote your energy levels day to day. And like I said, plan. It doesn't happen on its own. And eating once in every hour, that's kind of the rule of thumb I would suggest to everybody to do when you're out on the hill or you're out for an extended period of time in the outdoors being active. Take a snack for once in every hour. Every time I help someone plan to do this, they're like, oh, that's a load of food. And I'm like, well, that just tells me that you're not used to taking and eating on a regular basis. But actually, the cost of the weight of that food is actually going to do you far better and support you in that day than trying to think, I can't take all of that food because of the weight. And as each hour goes, you'll eat the food and the weight will go down. So the rule of thumb is eat once in every hour. Recovery from big days. Does everybody find that they're hungry after big days out? Yeah. Find our way eating around the kitchen, trying to satiate a feeling of hunger. Eating a protein snack again after each big day today. Big day is, so whether it's eggs, whether it's a yogurt, whether it's a protein shake, actually will help the recovery process. Protein is the most filling food that we can eat, so it can help manage our hunger. Keep up good hydration. If you're doing the big days, it's unlikely you're going to manage to have maintained your hydration. So that feeling of hunger could also be the fact that you're thirsty. So keep up good hydration, and the same message. Make sure you include protein in all your meals and snacks, and eat. When you go out for an extended period of time, the following day your metabolism is still raised, you've done exercise, you've worked hard, your body is still recovering, and there is a general rise in your metabolism in those recovery days. So if you're hungry, eat, including plenty of fruit and vegetables to help with the recovery process. And then consider a magnesium supplement. Does anybody get restless legs? Does anybody find it difficult to sleep after those big days? Yeah. Again, a magnesium supplement before you go to bed can also help both with the recovery of your muscles in the leg and ease the fatigue, but also help you with your sleep. And again, if anybody would like to take a picture. Everybody asked for food options, so I've just given you loads of lists, and hopefully there's something someone can take. And then you have the homemade sports drinks options here. So that's it, really, a whistle-stop tour to at least make a note of what is your one take-home message. What is the one standout thing that you think, right, I need to think about this? For many of you, I'd probably suggest your hydration. Whether it's making sure you have protein at your breakfast, whether you leave a snack in the car for after your big days, whether you need to increase your intake of fruit and vegetables. And I can guarantee that they will definitely make a difference to both your day-to-day activities, if you're out on the hill, if you're outdoor being active, in terms of your energy, your recovery. What you're going through the menopause. And it's to start here. Great, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Rebecca. I thought that was really interesting. The best bit is I often eat my sandwiches on the car on the way to work, and I thought that was a bad thing, but turns out it's I'll eat one in the morning and then one on the way home.
Perfect.
I've just got one question for you. Firstly, I always think it's not very fashionable to eat lots of food, and it's funny that you work with uphill athletes because Steve House, who started that, his whole book is all about how he survived a whole mountain of Denali with his goos, and I think it's great that you're promoting practical food. But I just wanted to ask you a question about the soya. You talked about soya for more estrogen. Is that just for perimenopause and menopause? Is that for everyone?
Right. Generally, the research is showing for people going through the menopause that actually adding in soya-based products can help support symptoms. But generally, for people on a day-to-day basis, people who choose vegan or pescatarian or reduced meat animal products, then we can include some soy. So it's suitable. It's higher in protein for those people that are reducing their animal protein intake considerably. Tofu, edamame beans are fantastic. You can get soya yogurts, soya protein, soya milk. So kind of the better option to choose if you're looking to increase your protein intake. Yeah, it's a good. So for when you're active and you're outdoors, it's difficult, obviously, to take lots of fruit and veg with you because they're high volume for low calories. So the idea is that you follow good nutrition habits when you're at home and when it's practically possible. And then when you're out in the mountains, then the idea is the most important thing is that you fuel that day and you maintain your energy levels. So it's eating once in every hour. So if it's not something I'd necessarily say, well, take a portion of berries and your 5 portions of fruit and veg in your bag. It's going to weigh you and then not very many calories. But you can take things like dried fruit or bananas, that type of option that you're still having something, but then making sure at the end of the day for a recovery, you can get frozen berries and add them into a yogurt. Or the days that you're off the hill, then you can really increase your intake of fruit and veg. It's trying to be practical. So the example with Steve House with the goo, like he's fast and light. He's trying to summit these attempts as fast as possible. So in these situations, you can't take enough food with you. You're not going to carry enough water with you. So the idea is to start hydrated. Your fitness has a great influence on your ability to perform in the mountains, but then it's rehydrating and eating as soon as you're off the mountain so that you can start to refuel and recover. And yeah, that's just an instant where actually the goos are the best thing he could have had because it'll give him the energy to really just give him the boost. So it's different for different scenarios, which is really difficult to then give you all information that covers everybody because we're all really individual. So if you ask me about what's the best nutrition for a hike, I would sit down with you and be like, well, what are your likes, what are your differences, what are your likes, dislikes, what foods do you eat, what foods can you eat, what do you take with you at the moment, what works, what doesn't work for you, and then plan it out individually. So there's some of the things that you can do, and then being practical because you can't take everything, you can't carry 4 litres, 5 litres of fluid with you to last the day. You might be able to top up, but it's about doing what's practically possible in those different situations.
I suppose what's great, what you talked about is if we all work within mountain training and we're out every day, you've given us really good nutritional plans for every day rather than just that one attempt on a big hill. So
Yeah.
there's quite a difference.
There's a huge difference into whether you're walking, you're on a hill where you can take food with you. You've got a 30-40 litre pack with you, or if you've got a 20 litre pack and you're light and you need to manage what you take. They're completely different situations and strategies. Yeah, I don't promote one or the other. There's some amazing athletes that eat vegan, you know, we can all live really healthily on vegan. We just have to plan it better, because it is interviewed quite a few ultra runners who eat a ketogenic diet, but actually when you talk to them about their race nutrition, they eat carbohydrates during a race, and it's a very extreme practice that you don't need to eat a ketogenic diet for optimal performance. We've seen that there are world-class athletes that eat low carbohydrate, but ultimately world-class athletes that eat vegan and eat high carbohydrate diets. So there's no one size that fits all, unfortunately, which is why nutrition is so big and so confusing. And it's trying to look at what you're doing and what you need to add in, rather than, you know, we are influenced by, you know, there's the world-class runner who's on a keto and never be on a keto to run fast, whereas actually they probably need to eat, you know, to run faster.
Lady at the back. Yeah, you, yeah. Can you talk a bit more about inflammation? What effect that has on the body?
Yeah, so good question. So inflammation again is like, what is inflammation? When we exercise, it causes inflammation, so a stress response on the body, but actually we want that inflammatory response to happen because we get fitter and we adapt to it. So then as we age, there's a natural rise in inflammation because of the aging process. And then when we eat, there's an inflammatory response because of the energy breakdown and the actual digestion process. So inflammation is a great question, because it's a word that's thrown around that not everybody really has a thorough understanding on it, but we do need some forms of inflammation in terms of